Do this with the goggles on, boys. With a better brush. You don't use this one. That's Daddy's brush. You don't touch Daddy's brush. Helping, it's helping. It's hard to keep these brushes from getting destroyed. I just like to bug you because you're a real easy target. And so am I for that matter, which is okay because it just means you're a chip off the old block. You guys that have been around for a while, you'll remember the old carb cleaner, little gallon jugs we could buy. And you pour them into a container like this and they'd have like a sealing compound, like a liquid on top of it, so it wouldn't off gas and screw up your family and your newborns and all that kind of stuff. Can't get that anymore. It's not easy to find. I don't even think anybody makes it. But that stuff worked well, man. Worked really well. This is just brake parts cleaner, I know. Shouldn't necessarily use it, but I'm using it right now. It's a good starting point. It's carburetor time. Let's get into this baby. We cleaned it up a little bit from the outside. I'm just gonna take apart the internals and then we're gonna get the outside of this cleaned up even better. Now all these parts here that are going into this carburetor are made by Bronco, of course, distributed through Grandma, and of course we sell them, so make sure you come to us when you need them. Make sure you use the right size screwdriver in these guys, because every carb I get seems to be, yeah, they always seem to be stripped out, then I got to drill them, and then, oh my God, it's just a nightmare. Come on guys, don't do it. Don't do it. There. I know, well, I've never had this carburetor out, so I know that at least we haven't worked on it. Oh, that's good. That's in good shape. So make sure you don't get any carb cleaner on this little diaphragm deal. It'll mess things up for you. I'll get in after that bowl. Oh, you know what? Before I take that bowl off, I'm going to take this little gizmo off. This is actually pretty good. Screws aren't stripped on it at all, which is kind of mind-blowing. Lots of goo in there. You kind of got to get in everywhere on these boys, just because the nooks and crannies are what hide the little things that ruin your day. The bike can run lean, or it'll not run at all, or it'll run like garbage. Carburetors. I love them and I hate them. Well, that's pretty good. It's one of the cleanest carburetors we've gotten into. Nice. Can you believe it? And this kit has everything we need, all the gaskets and new jets and everything, so that's groovy. Does it have a needle and seat? Oh, it has a needle and seat too. All that stuff's got to be changed. That is so sweet. Before you actually change out the jet with the one that comes in the kit, make sure that the same jets are going to be swapped. Sometimes, depending on elevation, there might be little differences, so it's important to check that out. So I need an 8 mil. We'll get to that in a second. Pile it out of there. That out of there. And all it takes is for one of these to sort of get plugged, and then it's not going to run right. Just a wee one. Just a wee guy. Oh yeah. So So this here, is that an air screw or a fuel screw? It's in the carb. I think that's a fuel screw. That's a fuel or air. I forgot, I get that mixed up. But make sure that you figure out how many turns out it is. So in order to do that, we're going to turn it all the way in, just so we can set it back to where it was. Half a turn, full turn, half a turn, full turn. That's 2 turns, 2.5. Geez, 2 3/4. That doesn't seem like factory settings to me. There's a little spring on there. And inside here, there's a tiny washer. 9 times out of 10, this is where people screw up. There's a little washer and a little O-ring in here. You got to get those out. Oh, there we go. See that little guy? Look at that. If you don't have the washer and that O-ring out of there, then it's just going to suck air through that orifice. And that's it. I mean, this is actually pretty good as far as carbs go. There's nothing else to remove from that. All we need to do now is remove this old nasty gasket. Don't ever really use silicone or whatever to try to fix these. It's not going to work. Get the right tool for the job. Okay, so I've cleaned this out and I've blown it out with compressed air. Very important to do. You have to blow out every little passage there is. If not, you run into issues. This carb was actually very clean. We're pretty lucky. I'm just looking at all the little parts and pieces here, and I never even noticed this, but they even give us a new screw and spring for the adjustment here. Look at that. Get rid of that old one. It looks like an 85. Yes, I use this because I can't see that number. I'm getting old, boys. Getting old. Grab the old one here. Make sure that's the same darn thing. $85. I'm feeling good today, Kai. How are you doing, bud? Yeah? Well, I'm feeling good because we're getting this thing back together. That's what I like. Now this nozzle here, you just want to make sure that all these little holes, these little ports are cleaned out in there. Very important. I just noticed they actually gave you a new one of these here as well. So there's a new one. Match the parts up, make sure they're the same. These do have to go in the right way. And the way it goes is, check this out. This nozzle fits over top of there perfectly. Here, not so much. Here it does. It's kind of a rounded surface. Boom. Just make sure it comes out. It does. That's a cast, you know, this is a casting, so you don't need to crank the tar out of everything here, boys. It's not like that. 125. That's a 125. Oh, nice. Goes right in here. Bam. Make sure this little plug goes back in that hole there. Give her a little twist. Stays in there. That's looking good. I'm not going to put my needle and seat and my float in until I've got sort of everything in place here. So, O-ring at the top of the needle, spring, washer, and then little tiny O-ring. Oops. It's a wee thing. Do you remember what the count was on this, Kai?
2 3/4.
2 3/4. Eh? What does the manual say? Do we know? I'm just going to snug that in until it's butted up there. One, 50, 2 1/2, 2 3/4. You know what? We're going to check the manual though. Make sure that that is where it's supposed to be before we actually install that thing. Sound like a plan? Because we don't want to. That may have been adjusted like that by somebody else, and there's that. Put our new seal in. It's coming together. Now the key with that is to make sure that your seal didn't get crimped in it before you start clamping it down. So you just want to look around and make sure that there's like an equal opening all the way around that thing. If it, basically you don't want it loose and leaking all over the place on you, boys. But you don't use any kind of sealant on that carb bowl. I just put a tiny little bit of dielectric grease on there. It doesn't have to be dielectric grease, but dielectric grease is pretty safe on these O-rings. Just get that in there. Don't over tighten it. There we go. Put our little primer back on. I cleaned this out really well, and I just sort of put some old, or put some fluid film on there just to brighten up that rubber, because that rubber sort of gets hardened up. And don't use carb cleaner on it, or it's going to definitely destroy it. I put a little bit of Never Seez on that screw just because this is where the water is going to get at. I don't know if I can do this. After you've put this whole thing back together and installed in the bike, just make sure you go through and make sure that nothing's leaking. Very important. Okay, so here we go, here we go. We didn't change the needle on this. Didn't really think it was totally necessary. If your carb was pretty bad, you know, gummed up, seized up, if you're using a lot of ethanol fuel and everything was kind of pitted in bad shape in there, by all means go ahead and change that. I'm just not going to do it. Doesn't need it. But everything else we changed. That carb is ready to go. Let's get her installed. Nice free movement down there. I like it. Okay, good.